Please subscribe my YouTube channel and press the bell icon on the YouTube app and never miss another updates from my YouTube channel. Last video, I have discussed about how to integrate Spring Boot with Amazon Sqs. In today's video, I am going to talk about how to integrate Spring Boot with Amazon SNS, that is Simple Notification Service. Okay. So to work with Simple Notification Service, so we have to create one topic in SNS. Okay. Let's open our AWS Management Console. So this is my AWS Management Console. So let's search with SNS Simple Notification Service. Let's click on that. Okay, so Amazon Simple Notification Service, publisher, subscriber, messaging for microservices and serverless applications. Okay, so here we have to provide the topic name. Okay, so let's provide SNS demo topic. Click on next step. So here we have two types of topics. One is PIFO, another one is standard. Okay, so basically PIFO strictly preserve the message ordering. So standard won't preserve the order, and after that, so it is exactly once message delivery. Okay, so whereas like standard is at least once message delivery, that is the difference. And here we have like some high throughput limit, and after that here highest throughput in publisher per second. So that means like there are like some limit for PIFO and there is no limit for standard here. And after that we have a subscription protocol set. Okay, so if you use PIFO, then you can limit to only Sqs. So if you use standard, so we have like couple of protocols. It's going to support Sqs, Lambda, HTTP, SMS, email, mobile applications, endpoints. Okay, so I'm going to demonstrate. Okay, so that is Sqs, and after that email here. That is the reason I'm going to use standard here. And let's come down. So here we have a name. So this is the display name. So if you want to provide, like you can provide here. And after that, this is optional, guys. And coming to the encryption, if you want to provide like server side encryption, you can just enable this. And after that we have access policy, like who can access your topic. Okay, by default, like only the topic owner can publish or subscribe the topic here. And after that we have a delivery retry policy. So delivery retry policy, we have like some default delivery retry policy here. Okay, so number of retries and minimum delay, maximum delay, some default delivery retry policy is there. Okay, and after that we have delivery status logging, and after that tags. I'm not going to use any tags. Okay, let's click on create topic. Okay, so our SNS demo topic is ready. So now, so basically like to access this topic we need, okay, IAM here. In the last video, so I have created like one user group and one user for this Sqs. So same thing I'm going to use in my SNS application as well. So if you not aware like how to create this user groups and users, you can just go through my previous video. This is my Sqs group that I have created in my previous video. I have provided Sqs user here. Okay, and I have some permissions here. One is like Amazon EC2 full access and administration access. So why I have provided administration access is, so I'm going to access Sqs and SNS here. So that is the reason I have provided this access, guys. Okay, let's open my ID here. First of all, let's create SNS Configuration. Click on Java class. So inside the config package, I'm going to create SNS Configuration. Okay, so this is okay. So before I'm going to create SNS Configuration, basically we need dependencies, guys. So let's open pom.xml file. Okay, here we need to provide two dependencies. One is like Spring Cloud Starter AWS. This is okay, AWS core library, and after that we have Spring Cloud Starter AWS messaging. If you want to work with Sqs and SNS, then we have to provide this dependency. Okay, so you can add like these two dependencies, and after that you can come back to your SNS configuration. And so let's annotate with @configuration. Okay, and after that, so we need two things here. One is like access key and secret key. Okay, this is access key and this is secret key. So this information I'm going to get it from, let's open our application.yaml file. Okay, so this is my previous video, access key and secret key. I'm going to use the same region, access key and secret key. Okay, so let's access this access key and secret key from application.yaml file to your Sqs configuration. So how we are going to get it? So we have @value. So we are going to access from our application.yaml file. Now, so we need one bean, guys. So let's create one bean. So this bean, I'm going to get it Amazon SNS client. Here, this Amazon SNS client, so it's going to be written. So we have Amazon SNS client builder. Okay, so this method will have standard and we have with region. Okay, so my region is US East 1, and after that I have with credentials here. Okay, so let's provide some credentials, AWS credentials provided. Okay, so let's create basic AWS credentials here, basic AWS credentials. So this AWS basic credentials is going to be access your access key and after that your secret key. Okay, so this access key and secret key I'm going to provide here with credentials, and after that let's build this. Okay, so it's throwing some error. Okay, provided Amazon SNS. Okay, SNS client. Okay, let's cache this. Okay, so that's it, guys. So it's ready. So let's add @primary here. Our SNS configuration is ready here, and now so we need one controller here. Let's click on Java class. So let's take controller SNS controller here. Okay, let's annotate with @rest controller here, and so here let's auto while. So private Amazon SNS client here. Okay, so we have Amazon SNS client, so we are going to make use of this Amazon SNS client to subscribe and publish the messages. So what I'm going to demonstrate here, I'm going to demonstrate two things here. Okay, so first I'm going to be send the messages from SNS to Sqs Queue here. Okay, and after that what I'm going to do is I'm going to sending the messages to your email. Okay, send messages to email. Okay, so these are the two things I'm going to explain here. Okay, so to work with basically, like first of all, like we have to subscribe, okay, to Sqs here, and after that we have to publish the message to the Sqs queue. Okay, to work with the Sqs queue, so we need like Sqs key, right? So let's create an Sqs queue here. So let's go back to Sqs here. Okay, so let's create an queue. So I'm going to create the standard queue here, guys. Sqs demo queue. Okay, so our queue, so I'm going to take the default configuration here. Okay, let's click on create queue here. Okay, our queue is ready. So let's go back to SNS simple notification service. Okay, So if you see here, actually by using Amazon SNS, we can do two things. One is like application to the application and application to the person. So what is application to the application here? So Amazon SNS is managed the messaging services that lets you decouple the publishers from the subscribers. So this is useful for application to application messaging for microservices, distributed system and serverless applications. That means, so if you see the diagram here, okay, application to application diagram. So we have a publisher will send the message to the SNS. So this SNS topic, okay, decouples the messages publisher from subscribers. So here the subscribers are either it could be AWS Lambda, AWS Sqs or HTTPS here. Okay, subscribers can include Lambda functions, Sqs queues and HTTP endpoints. So I'm going to use Amazon Sqs here. Okay, and this is one example I'm going to explain, and another example, so application to the person. So here application to the person means we can send the push notification to the mobile apps, text messages to mobile phone numbers and plain text emails to your email address. Okay, so same thing, but here, so publisher will send the message to the Amazon SNS, from Amazon SNS to, so here we have email. So I'm going to make use of email here. So it's going to be consuming your message from your SNS topic. Okay, so these are the two things I'm going to explain. The first one is this one, guys, application to application. So let's go back to your code. So here go to your controller. So first thing is this one. Okay, send the message from SNS topic to Sqs Queue. Okay, so to work with this, basically let's create one method, public string subscribe to Sqs Queue, otherwise Sqs, that's fine. So here we need like string okay, nothing is required here. Okay, so basically to subscribe, basically we have one class subscribe request. Okay, so that subscribe request, let's create object to this new subscribe request. Okay, so this subscribe request basically is going to be take some information, guys. Okay, let's format this. So here as topic ARN, okay, protocol and endpoint. So here the topic ARN is our SNS ARN, okay, and protocol is our Sqs here, and after that we have to provide Sqs endpoint. So first let's go back to our management console, guys. Okay, yeah, so let's click on topics here. Let's click on your topic. So here we have a endpoint. Okay, let's copy this, okay, and paste here, and after that our protocol is Sqs, right? So Sqs, and after that we have to provide, 1 second, guys. Okay, after that we have to provide, okay, endpoint, Sqs endpoint here. So let's go back to your Sqs simple queue messaging service, and let's click on this. Okay, so this is the ARN. Let's copy this and let's paste here. Okay, so let's okay, so here also. Okay, so now what we need to do is we have a Amazon SNS client here. Let's take Amazon SNS client dot subscribe. Okay, let's provide subscribe request here, right? And after that let's return Sqs subscription successful. Okay, and let's provide some endpoint here. Okay, get mapping. So subscribe, okay, Sqs here. And after that, so we have to subscribe to our email here. Okay, so let's copy this. So yeah, so we can discuss email again. And once you subscribe to your Sqs, so we have to send the message, right? So let's create one more endpoint, public string send message. Okay, so we need string message here, and after that, so we have a publish request, guys. So publish request, so this public request, so basically is going to take again our ARN here. Okay, so that is this SNS topic ARN, and after that, so we have to provide message, so our message and some body. Okay, Sqs demo, that's fine. And now, so let's take Amazon SNS client dot publish. Okay, let's provide publish request here, and after that, let's return message publish successfully. Okay, so here let's provide one get mapping. Okay, so here send Sqs, otherwise I will take some message path variable. Let's take path variable, this path variable would be message. Okay, so it's simple, guys. And so our controller is ready now. So now let's go back to application.yaml file and SNS configuration. Okay, US East one. So yeah, so it's ready, guys. So now what you are going to do is, let's start your application and test this whether it's working or not. Okay, our Spring Boot application is started now, and let's go back to your Postman. So first what we need to do is, we have to subscribe to our Sqs Queue. Okay, this is my endpoint to subscribe Sqs. Let's copy this and come back to the Postman. Let's paste here and let's hit this. Okay, we got a response, Sqs subscription is successful. Now to check the subscription, so we have to go to our Amazon management console. So here we have a SNS. Let's go back to our SNS. Okay, so this is my Amazon SNS. So here let's click on topics. So here we have a topic, right? So let's click on this, and if you come down, so we have a subscriptions. So if you see here, subscription is created and endpoint is this one and status is confirmed. So our protocol is Sqs. So it's successfully created, guys. And come back to Sqs again. Let's click on simple queue service. Okay, so this is my queue. Click on that, and if you come down, so you will see the subscription ARN here. Okay, and one more thing, before we are going to publish the message to this Sqs queue, so we have to confirm from Sqs queue. So otherwise it won't pick the messages on Sqs end. So what we need to do is, we have to click on the subscribe to Amazon SNS topic. Let's click on that. So if you see here, Amazon SNS topic, subscribe to Amazon SNS topic. So to allow your queue to retrieve the messages from an Amazon SNS topic, subscribe it to an Amazon SNS topic. Otherwise, you can't get it the message on Sqs Queue. Okay, so let's click on this choose a topic. So here we have a topic, okay, SNS demo topic, and let's save this. And now go back to our endpoint, and we have a endpoint to publish your messages, send something like, let's take hello world. Okay, let's send this, and let's go back to our Sqs Queue and click on send and receive the messages. Come down, you will see the messages available is one here. Okay, so let's click on poll for messages. You will see the message here. Okay, so our message is hello world here, subject is Sqs demo, and your message is this one. So now, so you want to receive in Spring Boot project. So to work with this, basically we need to create one receiver here. Let's create one receiver here. Sqs receiver. Okay, so this receiver I'm going to declare as a service, and let's take SL4J for logger, and let's write one method public void, okay, receive and string message. And so here I'm going to use log.info, so message received. Okay, so here let's provide message, and this could be Sqs listener to listen the messages on the queue. So our queue is Sqs demo queue, and after that, once it is listen the messages, so if you want to delete it, so we have a deletion policy. Okay, so let's add deletion policy here, guys. So how you want to be delete your messages? Once it is get success, then you can delete your messages from there. Okay, so this is my queue and this is my listener. Okay, and that's it, guys. Let's close this. Okay, let's restart your application. Okay, so we got the output, guys. So if you see here, we got the message. Okay, message received. So the message is this one, hello world, right? So what would be the topic, ARN and message ID, and all the information is available here, guys. Okay, it's working fine. Now what we are going to do is we are going to work with email. Okay, let's stop this and let's go back to your SNS controller. Let's maximize this. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to create one more method. Okay, so here subscribe to email. Okay, so we have to subscribe to email here, guys. So how we are going to be subscribed? So basically, like, we have to provide the email ID to subscribe this. So let's take email as my path variable here, guys. So let's take path variable. Okay, path variable value is, okay, email here, string email. Okay, so here coming to the subscribe request, basically we have to provide SRS, this SNS topic, and after that protocol is email. Okay, so here, so we have to provide the email here to subscribe that. So this email we are going to be pass it from path variable, and after that So we have to subscribe this request by using Amazon SNS client, and email subscription is successful. And after that, once the subscription is done, so we are going to be sending the message, okay, by using the same method. Okay, so here I'm going to change from Sqs to email demo. Okay, so that's it guys. So let's start your application and let's subscribe to your email and send the messages. Okay, application is started guys. So here let's subscribe to your email. Okay, let's provide some endpoint to subscribe, and my email ID is this one, gmail.com. Okay, let's send this. Okay, email subscription is successful, and now let's go back to our email and let's refresh. Okay, this is my AWS notification. Let's click on this. So here we have a confirm subscription, so let's click on that, and our subscription is confirmed guys. Now go back to your endpoint. Now send some messages to your email. Okay, so let's provide welcome to my channel. Okay, let's hit this. Okay, messages published successfully. Let's go back to your email. Okay, we got it, welcome to my channel. So this is my subject and this is my message guys. So it's working fine. So that's it guys. Go ahead and like this video. If you haven't subscribed my YouTube channel, please go ahead and subscribe my YouTube channel. Okay.